Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not diving into particle physics or ancient history.
No, something much closer to home.
Exactly. We're diving into the deceptively complex world of four tiny, everyday English phrases. We've got a stack of sources looking at these common phrasal verbs.
hmm And our mission is, well, pretty simple. Expose the surprising dual meanings, and the real-life human experience hiding just beneath the surface.
That's right. If you're the learner listening, you probably know the basic definitions. But for this deep dive, we're looking at how these verbs get up, go through, get by, and pass out. How they actually function as a kind of psychological shorthand.
Psychological shorthand, I like that.
Yeah, they summarize our entire human experience sometimes, especially those moments of endurance, maybe failure and recovery.
It's like turning simple grammar into a kind of survival guide. We often think of phrasal verbs as just functional, right?
It's really functional, yeah.
But these four, they're loaded with cultural weight. So let's just lay out the roadmap. We're tackling get up, then go through, get by, and finally pass out. Sounds good.
Okay, let's jump straight into the first one. The one that kind of defines the start of every single day for most of us.
All right, get up. Physically, this is the first meaning we all learn, isn't it? To rise from bed or maybe from sitting.
Yeah, basic stuff. Our sources define it clearly. I get up at 7 a.m. every morning. It's just that act of rising, usually voluntary, but, not always motivated. True. But that literal action, it quickly morphs into something, well, much more powerful, doesn't it?
It really does.
When we talk about motivation, we kind of skip the physical floor and go straight to the spiritual one. Tell us about that metaphorical shift.
Well, the power of get up really lies in its connection to resilience. When you're describing waking up, it's just the opposite of lying down. Simple.
Right.
But when you're describing a failure, get up
Yeah.
becomes the opposite of defeat. The phrase is suddenly about mental recovery after a failure. It's not just standing after you fall. It's about that conscious decision not to stay down.
That shift is so profound, though. Why this phrase, the one that starts literally on the bedroom floor? Why do we choose that for huge life challenges? We could say recover or rebound. Why get up? I think it's the immediacy. It feels kind of primal. Our sources highlight this with a key motivational quote. No matter how many times you fall, always get up again. Yeah, you hear that everywhere. And the phrase works because it keeps that core physical action rising against gravity, overcoming resistance, and applies it directly to abstract difficulty. Think about the subtle difference. When you stand up, you achieve verticality. When you get up, you're overcoming the previous state of being down.
Okay. It implies effort and return.
I think that distinction, that passive rising versus active returning, that's crucial. It's about agency, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're choosing to re-enter the fight, so to speak. It totally transforms the word from just a time of day reference into a statement of like pure grit and commitment.
Precisely. You can use it to describe waking up, or you can use it to summarize bouncing back from a huge business failure. It's one of the most efficient ways in English to communicate that idea, that perseverance.
Okay.
From perseverance, let's move to the word that often implies actually engaging with the struggle. Go through. This phrase definitely feels like it carries the heaviest emotional weight among the four. It absolutely does. The first, most immediate meaning is to experience or endure something difficult, something challenging.
Yeah.
When you use go through in this sense, you're explicitly signaling that the person faced something serious, difficult, emotional, maybe even traumatic.
Yeah.
It implies movement through pain.
The emotional investment is huge. If you say, she went through a hard time after losing her job, you know immediately that wasn't just a brief inconvenience.
No, it was a real struggle, likely drawn out.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating here is how the language takes that structure moving through difficulty and reapplies it to something completely practical, almost unemotional. The second common meaning is simply to check, inspect, or review something carefully.
Right, like I went through all the emails this morning. No endurance needed there, really. Just meticulous effort.
Exactly. You're processing information, not trauma.
Hmm.
So this is where the deep dive gets interesting. As you said, we have to ask, what's the cognitive link between enduring grief and processing documents? The answer, I think, is process. Both forms of going through involve this systematic movement from one point to the next in a defined sequence.
Okay.
Whether you're enduring a difficult phase tackling one day after another or meticulously checking files, you are navigating a process. You're proceeding to the next step.
So the core meaning is less about the content grief or contracts and more about the methodology, like moving linearly through a required pipeline.
Precisely. It dictates controlled, careful, sequential movement, even if that movement is purely emotional. You can tell a friend, I'm still going through the divorce paperwork, or I'm still going through the emotional aftermath of the divorce.
Hmm.
The structure handles both the administrative load and the emotional load pretty seamlessly. That provides a phenomenal synthesis for what could otherwise feel like two totally disconnected definitions. Okay, moving on to a phrase that speaks to that very relatable human condition of just existing on the edge. Get by. Get by. It's a wonderfully humble and honest phrase, isn't it?
It really is.
It means to manage or survive, specifically when resources are limited. But we need to define resources broadly here because it's definitely not always about money.
We do see the financial example most often, though.
That's
I don't
right.
earn much, but I get by.
Yeah, that's the classic one.
It immediately communicates you're surviving, paying the bills, maybe not luxuriously, but you're sustainable. And that is the crucial nuance. Get by means you're achieving the minimum sustainable level. You have just enough, you're surviving, but there's a certain acceptance of limitation built into the phrase itself. I'm curious, why do native speakers choose get by over simply saying, I manage or I survive? What's the difference in feeling?
Well, get by carries a feeling of humility, maybe quiet struggle, that manage doesn't quite capture. When you say I manage, it can sound quite competent, even capable.
Right, like you've got it under control.
Exactly. But when you say I get by, it sounds more relatable. It suggests maybe a bit of scraping. Our sources stress that this phrase perfectly applies to other limited resources too, like skill or time or even emotional reserves.
Let's talk about those other resources. The source material had a great example using language skill.
Yes. You can say, my French isn't great, but I can get by. It tells the listener that while your communication isn't perfect, you have just enough linguistic skill to navigate things.
Like you're not trying to write a novel in French.
Definitely not. But you can order food, ask for directions, you can manage.
And extending that to emotional or physical reserves, how many times have we all said something like, I barely got by on 3 hours of sleep this week? Oh, constantly. We're communicating that we achieved the absolute minimum required functionality. We were running on fumes, but we didn't completely crash and burn. We made it.
Yeah, we didn't fail.
Exactly. It's an honest, realistic phrase about capability and limitation. It's about accepting good enough when perfection just isn't an option. It captures that feeling we all know when we're overloaded and just trying to keep the lights on, metaphorically speaking. That's a great way to put it. Okay, now let's shift gears dramatically. From managing with little to a total instantaneous failure of management. Pass out. This is the phrase where context becomes absolutely fundamentally essential. Pass out is definitely memorable because its primary bodily meaning involves the system just shutting down. It means to faint or lose consciousness.
Right.
It's an involuntary physical failure, usually caused by extreme stress or heat or exhaustion. The examples are always quite vivid. It was so hot that I almost passed out, or he passed out after running the marathon. It's an abrupt stop. But then we have the second, entirely distinct meaning. And this is why language learners sometimes scratch their heads, totally.
Pass out also means to distribute items, hand things out, often used in very organizational or administrative settings.
I always picture a teacher or maybe a meeting coordinator when I hear that definition. The teacher passed out the exam papers. This meaning is active, deliberate, practical, the complete opposite of losing consciousness.
But isn't that potentially wildly confusing? I mean, if language is supposed to be clear, why would we use the exact same phrase for suddenly fainting and methodically handing out documents?
It seems to come down to that common linguistic thing where a physical action directed out extending outward takes on two separate meanings based on what's going out.
Okay, explain that.
Fainting is the consciousness going out, leaving the body effectively. Distribution is the items physically going out from the distributor to a group.
Okay. So it forces the listener, the learner, to rely entirely on context clues, and specifically the object being acted upon or the lack thereof.
Exactly. The critical comparison here really is the aha moment for understanding phrasal verbs, especially ones with such different meanings.
It's the difference between logistics and a medical emergency, basically. Precisely. Imagine telling someone the teacher passed out in class. If you stop there,
Yeah.
you have total narrative chaos. Yeah, is someone calling an ambulance or just waiting for their hand out?
Right.
The listener has to figure out, is the teacher unconscious or just organizing materials? So if the context is the teacher passed out the class schedule, okay, we have logistics. If the context is the teacher passed out due to low blood sugar, we have drama, big drama.
Mastering this phrase really means mastering that instantaneous evaluation of the surrounding words, especially the nouns. It's absolutely critical for avoiding serious miscommunication.
That's an excellent framework for why context matters so much, especially when the dual meanings are so dramatically opposed.
Woo, we've covered a lot of ground there. Moving from recovery to documentation, scraping by to sudden collapse.
Maybe let's do a quick structured recap, just of the dual meanings, to help lock them in for you, the learner. Good idea. Okay, so get up means to rise physically or to recover mentally. Go through means to endure a challenge or to review documents or items carefully.
Get by means to manage with little, having just enough resources, money, skill, energy, whatever.
And pass out means to faint or to distribute items.
Right.
And if we kind of zoom out again, the beauty is how these phrases, they really interconnect. They form a narrative of human survival almost.
Yeah.
Our sources provide a perfect little mini-story that weaves all four of these concepts together. It shows their real-life integration in just one short paragraph.
Okay, let's use that story then to really cement their meaning and power. All right, the story goes something like this. Last month was tough. I went through a lot of stress at work, and I barely got by with the bills. Okay, go through and get by.
One morning I was so exhausted that I almost passed out when I got up too quickly.
There's pass out, fainting, and get up, rising.
But things are getting better now, and I'm proud I made it through. Which echoes go through again.
Wow, in just, 3 sentences? We've covered financial struggle, emotional hardship, physical exhaustion, and ultimate resilience.
Exactly.
That single short paragraph really captures the rhythm of real life, doesn't it? The struggles, the strength, and those small, hard-won victories. They are like the building blocks for communicating everyday pressure really efficiently.
They truly are. They allow you to describe complex experiences, like managing a high-stress, low-income situation, without needing, paragraphs and paragraphs of explanation. These 4 verbs are kind of the linguistic summary of the human hustle. Human hustle, I like that too. So here is your challenge, building on what we've discussed. Take these 4 phrases, go through, get up, get by, and pass out, and try to create your own short story. Yeah, give it a go.
And focus on making sure the context clearly indicates which meaning of pass out you're using. That's the tricky one.
Definitely. And maybe just remember, when you look at these phrases, especially the motivational ones like get up and get by, remember their emotional core. If you are going through something hard right now, remember the motivational force of the language itself.
Yeah.
Just keep getting up because you will find a way to get by. That is a brilliant concluding thought. And listen, we definitely need you here for the next deep dive. So whatever you do, pay attention to the context.
Please.
And please don't pass out.
I'll be waiting for you right here.
Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep into the language we share.